Welcome to another deep dive here on Beyond the Known. Today we're venturing into, well, a really fascinating realm, history's most audacious hoaxes.
Yeah, they're always captivating stories.
Definitely. And this deep dive is sparked directly by our latest, our YouTube video, Top 10 History's Greatest Pranks. We're going to unpack the incredible stories behind these deceptions, drawing straight from the details we shared with you there.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting about historical hoaxes, I think, is their enduring power. They really capture our imagination because they reveal so much about us.
About us? How so?
Well, you know, our desires, our vulnerabilities, our willingness to just believe things sometimes. In a world that often seems straightforward, these moments where the rug gets pulled out from under us, they offer surprising aha moments.
Right, exactly the kind of rapid yet thorough knowledge you might be looking for if you follow our channel.
Precisely.
And yeah, these aren't just like silly pranks. They're often really elaborate schemes that tell us a lot about human nature and the societies where they happened. So, as we mentioned, we'll delve into each of the top 10 pranks in the exact order we presented them in our YouTube video. We'll give you even more context and some really intriguing details.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's unpack this, shall we? Kicking things off at number 10 in our YouTube video, the left-handed Whopper from 1998.
Ah, yes, Burger King. A bit of lighthearted fun, this one.
Totally. This was their April Fool's Day prank.
And what's interesting here is, like, its simplicity, right? And how well it played on just a common assumption. They took out a full-page ad.
A full-page ad announcing a Whopper designed specifically for left-handed people.
And it was just believable enough, you know, to spark a real reaction. It kind of highlights how easily we can be influenced by familiar things like marketing formats.
Even when the idea is clearly illogical.
Exactly. It speaks to our trust in brands, maybe,
Yeah.
and how we don't always critically look at everyday info.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people actually lined up at Burger King locations to try this Southpaw sandwich.
They really did.
And apparently it wasn't just lefties. Some right-handed customers reportedly demanded the regular version, maybe feeling left out.
Huh. Yeah, quite remarkable, isn't it? It just shows how susceptible we can be to suggestion. Even for something simple like a sandwich. Makes you wonder.
Yeah, how much of our choices are driven by similar subtle cues?
And the genius of the joke, of course, was that there was nothing special about it.
Nope. As our YouTube video pointed out, the ingredients were just rotated 180 degrees.
A testament to clever marketing, even on April Fools.
Right. So number 10, because it was funny, clever, pretty harmless, and, you know, the gag was short-lived. A good, solid prank to kick us off.
Definitely.
Okay, moving from that lighthearted fun, number 9 takes us back a bit further. 1957, the BBC spaghetti tree hoax.
Another April Fool's classic. This one's legendary.
It really is. For anyone who missed the details in our YouTube video, the BBC's Panorama program, a serious news show, right?
Very serious, yes.
They ran a 3-minute report on April 1st showing a family in southern Switzerland enjoying a bumper harvest of spaghetti.
From trees.
From actual spaghetti trees. You saw footage, people happily plucking strands of spaghetti from branches. It looked quite convincing.
And the key factor, the reason it worked so well, was that in 1957, spaghetti wasn't really a staple food in Britain. Not like today.
Right. It was seen as sort of exotic, often just came tinned with tomato sauce.
Exactly. So the idea of it growing on trees, while absurd to us now, maybe wasn't entirely outside the realm of possibility for some viewers back then.
It goes beyond just not knowing pasta well, doesn't it? It's about the BBC's authority, too.
Huge factor. People trusted the BBC implicitly, if the BBC showed it.
It must be true. And the execution was brilliant, wasn't it?
Top notch.
Our YouTube video touched on this, but they even discussed, like, the breeding techniques needed to cultivate the perfect length of spaghetti strand.
And the irony of filming some parts at an actual pasta foods factory in St. Albans adds another layer.
And the idea apparently came from the cameraman, Charles Dejager, remembering teachers teasing kids about it.
That's the story. And crucially, the voiceover was by Richard Dimbleby.
A hugely respected broadcaster. His authoritative voice must have lent so much credibility.
Absolutely. A perfect example of using a trusted voice to, amplify the hoax.
And the public reaction was just priceless. People actually called the BBC the next day,
asking how to grow their own spaghetti trees.
And the BBC's response, wonderfully deadpan. Place a sprig of spaghetti in a tin of tomato sauce and hope for the best.
Fantastic. It just perfectly captured the public's limited knowledge of certain foods then. That's why it's number 9, a classic, well-done piece of harmless deception.
Okay, on to number 8 in our YouTube video. We jump forward to 2009, and things get, well, significantly less lighthearted,
Yeah.
Balloon Boy.
Oh, yeah, this one unfolded live, didn't it? Gripped everyone.
It really did. As we covered in the video, Richard and Mayumi Heen released this homemade helium balloon, looked like a silver flying saucer, in Fort Collins, Colorado.
And then they claimed their 6-year-old son, Vulcan, was trapped inside.
The images were just bizarre. This thing is soaring thousands of feet up. Authorities said it hit 7,000 feet, flew for 90 minutes, 50 miles.
And the poor kid instantly became Balloon Boy in the media worldwide.
The response was huge. National Guard helicopters, police pursuit, the whole 9 yards.
Then it lands, and Falcon's not inside. Panic, right? A frantic search starts, especially after reports maybe something fell from it.
And then the twist. The signal something was really off, Falcon's found hiding.
In the attic.
In the attic of his own home. Apparently he'd been there the whole time.
That's when the hoax suspicions just exploded.
But the real turning point, the moment highlighted in our YouTube video, was that interview, Larry King Live.
Ah, yes. When Falco was asked why he was hiding.
His response to his dad. You guys said that, we did this for the show.
Oof. Pretty much sealed it, didn't it? Confirmed it was likely a publicity stunt. Beyond the legal stuff, it really shows our fascination with real-time media drama.
And the ethical lines crossed for attention.
Definitely.
What followed was a criminal investigation. Richard Heen pleaded guilty to trying to influence a public servant. Jail time, hefty fine. Mayumi Heen, too. It went way beyond a prank.
And it's interesting from a science angle. Wasn't there an initial assessment? A professor thought maybe the balloon could lift a child?
Based on the Heen's claimed dimensions, yeah. But when authorities actually measured it...
It was much smaller. Didn't generate nearly enough lift. And weighed more than claimed, too.
So, yeah. A hoax that started with this crazy visual in a distressed family just unraveled fast into a calculated media stunt with real consequences. Number 8. Captivated everyone, but exposed just as quickly.
A very modern kind of hoax, in a way.
True. Okay, cracking the top 7 in our YouTube video, The Cardiff Giant. We go way back again, 1869.
Ah, a classic American hoax. This one's fascinating for what it says about belief.
Totally. The story starts with workers supposedly digging a well on William Stubb Newell's farm in Cardiff, New York. And they unearth
This massive petrified man, 10 feet tall, 3,000 pounds.
huge. And it instantly became a major attraction. People flocked to see it.
And the success wasn't just gullibility, right? It tapped into existing cultural stuff, religious beliefs about giants in the Bible.
Yeah, Genesis. So, a huge debate still. Is it a real petrified giant? Or something else?
Geologist John Boynton examined it early on, said, nope, not a fossil. He thought maybe it was an old statue carved by Jesuits centuries ago to impress Native Americans.
And Andrew D. White, president of Cornell, he was suspicious too, noted the weird location for a well.
Smart observation.
And the truth, as our YouTube video laid out, was it was all a setup, a deliberate hoax by a guy named George Hull.
Oh, yeah. An atheist, apparently.
Who wanted to prove how gullible people were, especially about religion and sensational stuff. He'd secretly had the giant carved from gypsum in Iowa.
Shipped it to Cardiff, buried it, waited for the discovery. Quite the plan.
And what's really amusing is P.T. Barnum getting involved.
Of course Barnum got involved, the ultimate showman.
He tried to buy the Cardiff Giant, but Newell refused.
Yes.
So Barnum just made his own copy.
And advertised it as the real thing. Famously said something like he already had 3 Cardiff Giants. A hoax of a hoax.
Incredible. The original eventually ended up as a coffee table in someone's basement, before going to the museum in Cooperstown, New York, where it still is.
And Barnum's copy is at Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum in Michigan, I think.
Right. And the Cardiff Giant even inspired copycats like the solid Muldoon. So, yeah, a really influential piece of deception. Number 7.
A great example of exploiting belief systems.
Definitely. Okay, number 6 in our YouTube video brings us to the Cottingley Fairies. A bit more charming, maybe, but still deceptive. 1917.
Ah, the fairies at the bottom of the garden. These played on that desire to believe in the magical, the unseen.
These are the famous photos, right? Taken by 2 young cousins in Cottingley, England, Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths, claiming to show actual fairies.
And produced a whole series of these images that just captured the nation's imagination.
And incredibly, it wasn't just the public. These photos were widely believed, even by really prominent people like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
The creator of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Who was, ironically perhaps, deeply into spiritualism at the time.
Yeah. The photos became this huge national sensation, really fueled belief in the supernatural.
For decades, too. It wasn't until much, much later, late 70s, early 80s, that the truth finally came out.
The women confessed, didn't they? Admitted the photos were faked.
Yep, they'd used paper cutouts of fairies,
Yeah.
held up with hat pins.
Such a simple trick. Fooled so many for so long. But it's interesting, as our YouTube video mentioned, even after admitting the hoax.
Frances, one of the girls, always maintained that at least one of the photos, the fifth one, was genuine. She still believed she'd seen fairies.
That little bit of lingering belief adds another layer, doesn't it?
It really does. The Cottingley fairies are number 6 because they fooled a brilliant literary mind and really tapped into and maybe even boosted that widespread belief in fairies and the supernatural during that whole era.
A powerful visual hoax. Okay, entering the top 5 in our YouTube video, the Tassidae tribe hoax of 1971. This takes us to the Philippines. Anthropological deception this time.
Yeah, this was a huge deal. The supposed discovery of this incredibly isolated Stone Age tribe, the Tassidae, living deep in the Mindanao rainforest.
The initial reports painted this picture, right? About 27 people living in caves using stone tools.
Wearing clothes made from orchid leaves, like straight out of prehistory.
It became this massive international story. Our YouTube video touched on the National Geographic cover story that really put them on the map, made them global celebrities almost overnight.
And the narrative was just incredible. No contact with the outside world for 1,000 years. A living window into the Stone Age.
And there was that journalist, John Nance, who wrote the bestseller, The Gentle Tassidae.
Right, with a foreword by Charles Lindbergh, no less. Nance had close ties to the Philippines, documented their supposed way of life, really solidified that image.
But then, over a decade later, the whole thing just started to crumble.
Yeah, it came out that the discovery was likely a huge hoax, orchestrated by Manuel Elizalde Jr., who was a senior official in
the corrupt Marcos regime.
Exactly, for political and financial gain.
The allegations were pretty damning. That Elizalde basically bribed members of local tribes to act like a Stone Age group.
Wear leaves, live in caves, pretend they didn't know about farming or the outside world, all to create this romanticized image, boost the government's standing, maybe attract funding.
And there were doubts early on, weren't there? An ethnobotanist, Douglas Yen, and anthropologist Carol Maloney, they noted inconsistencies.
Yeah, things about their diet, their language, that just didn't fit with supposedly being isolated for millennia.
And then after Marcos was kicked out, journalists finally got access again, like that Swiss reporter Oswald Eiten.
And he found the Tassidae living in regular houses wearing modern clothes. Not exactly Stone Age cave dwellers.
And members of the tribe themselves reportedly told Eiten that Elizalde had pressured them, told them to stage the whole caveman lifestyle.
In exchange for money, protection. They said they normally lived in huts and farmed, but were told to take off their clothes and pose as primitives. It seems pretty clear it was largely staged.
Though, as our YouTube video pointed out, it's still a bit complex, isn't it? Some anthropologists still think there might be some genuine element. Maybe not Stone Age isolated, but still a distinct group.
Right. The truth is probably somewhere in that murky area between total fabrication and maybe some level of authentic culture that was then heavily manipulated and exaggerated. It's ethically very complicated.
Absolutely. A staged anthropological discovery that fooled many for years with serious political undertones. That's why it's number 5.
A really sobering one.
Definitely. Okay, number 4 in our YouTube video, the Hitler Diaries. A massive journalistic embarrassment from 1983.
Oh boy, this one was huge. 60 volumes of journals, purportedly handwritten by Adolf Hitler himself.
Imagine, the story just sent shockwaves through the historical world when they surfaced.
And the West German news magazine, Stern, they famously bought these diaries for a fortune. Millions of Deutschmarks.
Then sold the serialization rights to other big outlets, like the Sunday Times in the UK.
And initially, there was this veneer of authentication, most famously by the historian Hugh Trevor Roper.
A big name. He declared them genuine at first.
But, as we mentioned in the video, Trevor Roper pretty quickly started having second thoughts, retracted his authentication, and other historians immediately raised serious doubts.
And those doubts were confirmed, like, really fast by forensic analysis.
Yeah, turned out the diaries were just blatant forgeries.
Yeah.
Created by a guy named Konrad Kujau.
The paper had stuff in it, fluorescent elements that wouldn't have been in wartime documents. The binding used polyester,
which wasn't even invented until after World War II. Pretty basic errors, really.
Kujau was already known as a counterfeiter, right?
Yeah.
And a collector of Nazi memorabilia, so he had the motive and maybe some source material.
And he worked with this Stern reporter, Gerd Heidmann, who was kind of obsessed with Nazi history and played a big role in getting the diaries to Stern.
Heidman, apparently fueled by the promise of this colossal scoop, kept the whole project incredibly secret, even inside Stern.
Set up a secret unit, transcribe them from that old Gothic script. But the initial checks, the authentication, clearly superficial and flawed.
And the quotes they released from the forged diaries, supposed insights into Hitler's private thoughts. Meanwhile, Heidman was apparently living it up with the prophets.
But yeah, the truth couldn't stay hidden.
That press conference announcing the diaries must have been chaos. Trevor Roper publicly airing his doubts. Historian David Irving, who'd always said they were fake, apparently caused a scene.
Yeah, dramatic stuff. And then the final nail in the coffin was the forensic examination by the German Federal Archives, the Bundesarchiv, proved definitively they were fakes.
Wow. A huge blow to journalistic integrity. A fascinating example of how even major institutions can get completely duped. The Hitler Diaries, number 4.
Lesson in checking your sources, definitely.
No kidding. All right, cracking the top 3 in our YouTube video is the Piltdown Man. A paleoanthropological fraud, a fake discovery about human origins that lasted over 40 years. Started in 1912.
Yeah, this is a really significant scientific hoax. Bone fragments presented as fossilized remains of an early human ancestor, the so-called missing link between apes and humans.
And despite some skepticism early on, it was largely accepted by the scientific community for decades.
Which is pretty incredible. It wasn't until 1953 that Piltdown Man was definitively exposed as a composite forgery. Just bits stuck together.
And our YouTube video noted that a big scientific review in 2016 pointed the finger pretty strongly at the original discoverer, an amateur archaeologist named Charles Dawson.
Dawson claimed he found the fragments in a gravel pit in Piltdown, England, and he collaborated with prominent scientists like Arthur Smith Woodward at the British Museum and Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
Their involvement lent it credibility, obviously, and the hoax lasted 41 years. That's remarkable longevity.
There have been other suspects over the years, people wondering who else might have been involved. But the evidence against Dawson himself is pretty strong, especially considering other archaeological forgeries he was linked to.
So how was it finally exposed?
Through scientific techniques that weren't available back in 1912. Things like the fluorine absorption test, which helps date bones found together, and later, DNA analysis.
And what did they find?
The fluorine test showed the skull and jawbone were different ages, and the DNA eventually revealed the jawbone was actually from an orangutan, and the teeth were from a chimpanzee filed down.
Wow. Just cobbled together.
Exactly. And it's important, as the video highlighted, to think about the biases that let this hoax persist for so long.
Like what?
Well, nationalism played a role. Many in Britain wanted to believe the earliest human ancestor was found in England, the earliest Englishman. There were also biases related to race and gender in how the discovery was interpreted.
Right. So Piltdown Man at number 3. A long-running scientific deception that really misled our understanding of human evolution for quite some time.
A major detour in science history.
Okay, number 2 in our YouTube video, The Great Moon Hoax of 1835. A truly sensational piece of journalistic fabrication.
Oh, this one is just wild. A series of articles published in the Sun newspaper in New York.
And the premise was just astounding for the time. Sir John Herschel, who was a real, respected astronomer,
Who supposedly used this incredibly powerful new telescope
to discover life on the moon.
And the descriptions in these articles were just pure fantasy. Absolutely nuts.
As our YouTube video detailed, they described all sorts of creatures: bison on the moon, unicorns, bipedal beavers,
and bat-like winged humanoids building temples.
Just incredible imagination. They painted these vivid pictures of the lunar landscape too: trees, oceans, beaches.
And the telescope itself was described as this colossal thing using some revolutionary new principle, supposedly shipped all the way to South Africa for the observations.
And what's amazing is that the Sun newspaper apparently never issued a retraction, even when everyone knew it was a hoax.
Nope. Their circulation skyrocketed. Shows the power of a sensational story, true or not.
Who actually wrote it? Is that known?
It's debated, but the most likely candidate is Richard Adams Locke, who was a writer for The Sun. It seems he intended it partly as satire, maybe, targeting other sensational scientific claims of the time.
But people took it seriously.
Oh, yeah. The Great Moon Hoax at number 2 really shows the power of the press back then to shape public perception and just the public's huge appetite for the extraordinary.
A truly grand newspaper hoax. And that brings us finally to number 1 in our YouTube video. The most dramatic, arguably the most impactful hoax on our list, the War of the Worlds broadcast of 1938.
The Orson Welles broadcast. Mercury Theater on the Air's radio adaptation of the H.G. Wells novel.
And what made this one so significant, so powerful, was that incredibly realistic news bulletin format they used.
Right. It wasn't just a play. It sounded like breaking news reports interrupting regular programming.
They updated the story to contemporary times, used real place names, at least initially.
Which added to that sense of immediacy, of realism. Although, as our YouTube video mentioned, the network, CBS, did insist on some changes to tone down the realism a bit, make it clearer it was fiction.
But maybe not enough, or people tuned in late.
Exactly. The broadcast detailed this supposed Martian invasion, starting subtly and then building with increasingly alarming, realistic-sounding news flashes, eyewitness accounts, military reports.
And yes, announcements were made during the broadcast stating it was fiction.
But the crucial one, the mid-show break announcement, was apparently delayed. And if you missed the intro,
you might genuinely believe Martians were landing in New Jersey.
And that's what reportedly happened. Widespread panic.
Stories of people fleeing their homes, jamming highways, calling the police, even supposedly trying to fight back against the invaders.
Stefan Schnabel, one of the actors, recalled the chaos at the CBS studio afterwards, police flooding the building.
Paul White, head of CBS News then, described the switchboard being completely overwhelmed. Orson Welles himself was apparently distraught, thinking his career was over.
Now, later research has questioned just how widespread the panic really was. Some argue it was exaggerated by newspapers afterwards, partly to discredit radio as a news source.
That's an interesting point. The extent might be debated.
But there's no doubt the broadcast caused significant alarm and confusion for many listeners. It stands as this incredibly powerful example of media's impact.
And how easily a well-crafted narrative, especially using a trusted format like news bulletins, can be mistaken for reality, particularly in an anxious time, maybe with war looming in Europe.
Absolutely. That's why the War of the Worlds broadcast, for the sheer scale of its impact, the panic it did cause, and the huge questions it raised about media responsibility. That's why it takes the top spot in our YouTube video.
Whew. Quite a journey through deception.
Indeed. So looking back at all 10, you definitely see recurring themes, don't you?
Yeah, like that desire to believe something extraordinary.
The trust people place in authority, whether it's the BBC, scientists, newspapers.
And just the power of skillful deception itself. A convincing story, a fake artifact, a staged event.
They all tap into different aspects of our psychology, our society.
Absolutely. These stories, from the funny ones like the Whopper to the really misleading ones like Piltdown Man or the Tossidae Tribe, they offer fascinating insights into belief, disbelief, and just us.
Well said.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into history's greatest pranks, expanding on that countdown we shared in our YouTube video.
And if you want to see the original countdown, the visuals, the rankings, definitely check out Top 10 History's Greatest Pranks on our YouTube channel.
Please do. And while you're there, maybe give the video a like. Follow our channel at People's Top 10 Authorities. Subscribe. You know the drill. It helps us keep exploring the beyond the known.
Absolutely.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Considering how easily these hoaxes spread back then, what does it say about our modern digital age? With information and misinformation spreading faster than ever, what new forms might historical hoaxes take in the future?